Hey there, welcome everybody here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're going to do an episode of favorites tonight. It is Wednesday. I've chosen a topic that I had written down some time ago and just kept ignoring it for whatever reason. So what this topic is going to be is that many of you, of course, have experienced this. I don't think this is a phenomenon localized to me, but I think it's localized to music in general, though. This topic is going to be 25 songs that I used to like a lot, but they've suffered that burnout from too much radio airplay, too much notoriety, played everywhere, or they're on all the set lists, on all the shows, and you hear them everywhere. But basically, it's a radio burnout songs. So I picked 25, and the first thing I'm going to tell you about the songs is that I like them all at some point in time. I like them enough for me not to like them anymore. In order for you to like something, or in order for you to really not want to hear something anymore, you must have played it enough that you liked it enough to get to that stage. So I've picked out 25 tracks off. This is not going to be in any particular order either. I stacked them from the album so that I show you where they originated from. So I talk a little bit about them, but there's easily twice as many. I've just tried to pick out 25 from the bands I like the most, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the other songs they also have that are suffering from a bit of a burnout for me. So we'll go with this one first because I don't like this band at all. At one time I did like them. I don't like them at all anymore. And this one particular song is part of the reason. I just cannot stand this song at all anymore. At one time, I liked it a lot, though. I used to play it a lot. I remember playing it. And that's from Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses. And the song I'm thinking of is Sweet Child of Mine. Now, I've heard this a million times on the radio when I was in the 90s. And it was around that time in the 90s that I started really not liking that song anymore. And then some of their other stuff, too, like Cold November Rain, which isn't on this album, but it's another song, or Welcome to the Jungle. Like, I don't really like any of these songs anymore. I don't really like this band anymore, but that, for whatever reason, that song Sweet Child of Mine, I did like it at one time. I don't know when it was, probably in the 80s, maybe up to the 90s, and then I just kind of I couldn't stand it anymore. So I just now whenever I hear it on the radio or I'm somewhere and it's playing, I either leave the room or I click it off immediately. So that's the first song. So I guess you could call that number 25. This isn't any particular ranking. We'll just go up until I get to number 1. The next one is from an album that I absolutely love. I still love this album. I like everything on this a lot. I even like this song still. But I'm just tired of hearing it. I just don't want to hear it anymore. And so much so that sometimes I'll skip over it when it comes up. And we're talking about You've Got Another Thing Coming off of this album, for Screaming for Vengeance, which is one of my favorite albums. This track, I don't hate it, but I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. It's been overplayed. Every radio station picks that one, and there's a couple other ones that they pick, but that's the main one I don't like by them. So next up we have from this album, Face Value, Phil Collins. So this one's a little bit of a unique situation. So yeah, I heard it a ton on the radio and I was getting kind of tired of it, but I also had the album and my daughter became fascinated by the song In the Air Tonight. She loved it. And I had to play it all the time in the car. I had to take the disc with me and play it for her all the time. And that's the only song she wanted to hear off the album. And I was already kind of on the burnout with it. Now I just don't want to hear that track ever again as long as I live, even though at one time I did love it. So, In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins. So the next track up might surprise some people, but it shouldn't, because it's one of the most overplayed songs on rock radio. It's one of the most overplayed songs. Every time I see this band on TV, this is one of the songs they play them all the time. And at one time, this was my favorite song by this band. Now I hope I never have to listen to it again. From this band, Queen, A Night at the Opera. Yes, you know what it is, Bohemian Rhapsody. Do I like the song? Yes, I like the song. But I never want to ever hear it again as long as I live. Next up, another rock radio burnout. And it was actually one of the two songs that kind of launched this guy for me. And I liked it a lot when I first heard it, because it was very different than any other kind of metal stuff that I'd heard before. But it just, every time they introduce this guy anywhere, anytime they talk about this guy anywhere, anytime they're playing an anthem by him, it's always the same song, Crazy Train, from Blizzard of Oz, from Ozzy Osbourne. Yep, never want to hear it again. If I can get away with it, I'll be happy. The next one is, I cannot find the album that this was originally on, and I'm not even sure what album it was, but I've never liked it. It drones. It's a 7-minute song that would have been better as a 3-minute song. Played way too much on the radio, overkill, and then you have that long, drawn-out, repetitive 4-minute repetition of the song Hey Jude from the Beatles. Yes, there's other Beatles songs I'm not really crazy about either, but that one is the main one. That one, and then there's Let It Be. That's another one I could live without as well. But the main one for me from the Beatles is Hey Jude. The next one up comes from a band that I like their early stuff quite a bit. I do not like their later stuff very much. But this particular track, I did like it when I first heard it. I played it quite a bit. It was on the radio all the time. And within a couple of years, I was detesting it. And that's Love in an Elevator from Aerosmith on their Pump album. Yeah, you know, you could go down the list on this album. Jamie's Got a Gun. You know, and then there's a lot of their ballads. I don't care for those songs, but this song I actually liked. I did like it. I did like Jamie's Got a Gun. I liked both of them, but I don't really like. I don't want to hear them ever again, and especially Love in an Elevator. I've had enough of it. Thank you. Next up, I chose the live version of this song because it's the live version that drones on forever. It's kind of the same effect that Hey Jude has with the Beatles, but it's from the Stones, and it's Sympathy for a Devil. It just goes on and on and on. At one time I liked it. I thought it was great. But it just goes on and on and on, and it just wore on me because it's on the radio all the time. Maybe not so much now, but I don't listen to the radio anymore, so I don't know. But from this album was where I got it, and I just don't want to hear it no more. Next up, there's a few other Stones too. Actually, there's a few other Stones songs. Emotional Rescue. I did like it at one time. I just kind of don't want to hear it anymore. Or Start Me Up. There's another one. This one is the one song from this band that I don't like. I did like it initially because I was dating somebody at the time who was a big fan of this song, and so I liked it a lot. Now I never want to hear it again. Magic Power off of this album. Otherwise, this album's brilliant, but that one song, I'm just tired of it. I hope I never have to hear it again, even though I did ask for it in my playlist set for Triumph a couple weeks ago, only because I think you can't have a Triumph concert without throwing that song in. It's one of their biggest hits. So, yeah, that song, don't want to hear it no more. Ever. Next up, we have from this band, Whitesnake, and from this album, Crying in the Rain. Yep, tired of it. Too much airplay, too many radio plays. Seemed like it was on at one point. It was on like every hour for a while there. It seemed like to me anyways when I was first listening to it. And there's a lot of stuff on this album that kind of I liked a lot and I don't care for as much. But that one, Here I Go Again, that's another one that I don't really care for. Children of the Night, another one. I was going to say Is This Love, but I never really liked that song, so it wouldn't be fair to put it in here. But Crying in the Rain was one of my favorite songs on this album. Initially, don't want to hear it ever again. Then we're going to get to this album, which I already did on this album last Tuesday, but I think the song Smoke on the Water, well, a good song, and this album is not a bad album. I just think it's been overplayed. It's been beaten with a stick so much that I just can't listen to it anymore. And there's a few other songs by this band, but this is the one that sticks out with like a sore thumb for me. And so, yeah, gotta go. Now the radio really has destroyed this particular track, which I did like because it comes from an album I like a lot. But it's the one song I don't want to hear again. Do I need to say what it is? Yes, the boys are back in town. Well, the boys can leave town and take this song with them. That would be fine with me. And it's a tough thing to say because I really like that album. I really like Thin Lizzy, and I really liked that song at one time. But you can only take so much before you get tired of something. Here's another one, overplayed, overkilled title track from Hotel California. I don't think it gets as much airplay on, it doesn't get it on the internet as much, and I think that's been a little bit to its credit because the Eagles don't allow their music to be used in that fashion, which is a good thing, I think. And maybe this song might make a little bit of a comeback somewhere, but at this point in time, I've just heard it too many times. Please, I don't want to hear it no more. Okay, now we're getting down to the bottom of this stack. Before I go on to some of the albums I have, I'm going to talk about a couple of songs that I actually don't have the albums. And one of them is from Toto's Hold the Line. Now, I know people might think that I was going to say Africa. I actually like that song. I think the vocal parts in it are fantastic. And at one time, I loved this song. This was the one song by Toto I loved. But it's just played and played and played to death on the radio. And I didn't get out of radio fast enough before it destroyed it for me, so it's gone. The other song that I don't have the album for is Dirty Laundry. I might actually have that album, to be honest. I never thought to look for it, but I might have that album. But this particular track, I loved it a lot. I played it a lot. And then it was on the radio a lot, and it was on the TV set all the time. And then other people were playing it at parties and everything and dances. And then it just turned south for me all of a sudden, and I just never want to hear the song again. Dirty Laundry. Okay, so I threw those two in, even though I don't have the albums for them. But the next one I do have the album for, from 1984. I mean, you could arguably, it's Panama. That's the one I don't like. I can't stand it anymore. I liked it a lot when this album came out. It was one of the two tracks that played a lot on the radio. Actually, don't really like the other one much anymore either, but I'm a little more lenient on that one than this one. This one, I feel nothing when it comes on the radio, or if I'm somewhere and somebody starts playing it, I leave the room. I don't want to hear it anymore. And you could arguably say that might be the case with half a dozen of this band's songs from the 80s and 70s that have just burned out from overplay, but that one's the one I chose today, Panama. Next up, we got from this album, which is an album that I do like. It's not an album that people would think a Burnout would come from, but it did. This is BTO2. I like this album a lot. but I can't stand Taking Care of Business. At one time, it was probably one of the 2 or 3 songs that got me into this band, or at least early on, it was a song I liked a lot. But it quickly went south, and then it went through a period of time. For about a month, I liked it, and then it kind of burned out on me a bit, and I got tired of it. And then now it's just completely destroyed, and I don't ever want to hear it again if I can possibly get away with it. Next up, probably the most burned out song in the history of rock for me from this album, and do I need to say what it is? Overplayed. Every time they put this band on TV or on the radio, they all say the same thing. Oh, one of the greatest rock songs of all time. Rock and roll all night, the party every day. Well, at one time it was my favorite song. Right up to 1980, it was my favorite song. And then slowly and slowly it got eroded to the point where now, even when I decide to play this album, which I do on occasion, I skip that side of the album except for the first 2 songs, Rock Bottom and Cold Chin. But Kiss has quite a few songs by them. One of the other ones that I really can't listen to anymore is Detroit Rock City, and at one time I loved that too. I Want You, I don't want to hear that no more either. The 2 older songs, Firehouse and Deuce. Well, Deuce I don't mind still. I can still listen to that. It's got some kind of a special energy to it that I like. But Firehouse, no thank you. So there you go. One song from this band that I've kind of burned out on is Run to the Hills. I don't hate it. At one time, it was probably the first track from this band that I liked because it was the one I heard the most on the radio. And then once I got this album, was listening to it a lot, it was the one track I didn't like and didn't want to listen to it anymore. Just because it's overplayed. It was overplayed then. I don't know if it's still overplayed. It feels like it might be, though. Maybe Hallowed Be Thy Name has been overplayed a lot too, but that might be on my next week's episode. We'll talk about it then when we get to it. So for this album, maybe the whole album has been overplayed, really. I think this may be one of those albums that absolutely adored it. It was my initiation to this band. I still love the album, but You Shook Me All Night Long, can't listen to it anymore. It's just destroyed. I can't listen. Back in Black's a little bit like that too, but not as bad, and neither is Hell's Bells. Neither of those songs. And Shoot to Thrill, which has become one of my favorites, but none of those, they don't suffer as much because I kind of got out of the radio before they got really murdered. But that song, Jesus, please don't play it for me. This album, which is one of the greatest albums of all time, lots of really good stuff on here, and I know everybody what they think I'm going to say, but they're wrong. The one that I don't like, or the one that I did like a lot, and I loved some of the covers of it as well, but I just can't listen to it anymore. It's played to death, and that's rock and roll. Played and played to death. Don't want to hear it anymore. Yeah, Stairway to Heaven is played to death too, but it doesn't seem to bother me as much with that song as it does. But they have other songs that are overplayed as well. Communication Breakdown, don't want to hear that no more. Maybe Cashmere's starting to get on my nerves a bit too, but overall, that one is the one I don't. Now this one, the title track, Paranoid, was the song that launched me to these guys, kind of got me going on them, made me think about them. This album is fantastic, but that song is absolutely killed by radio. Radio burnout, that's the poster child right there for it. Radio burnout, Paranoid. Please do not play that for me. I'm going to take a drink here because I'm getting dry. So we have a few more left. I've given you a lot of good stuff. Now I'm going to get down to 2 bands that I absolutely adore. I love these 2 bands. I love everything about them. But even they have tracks I don't want to hear anymore. And we'll start with this one first, Styx, from the Grand Illusion. It may be the reason why the Grand Illusion hasn't stood as well time for me. At one time, I thought this was an absolute masterpiece of an album. I still think it is. But the Come Sail Away, please. It every time they say Styx, the greatest band, or this or that about Styx and how wonderful they are, this is one of the tracks they play. Please do not play it for me. I don't want to hear it anymore. The rest of the album I'm okay with. It's not burned out, or none of the others. There's a couple tracks that are a little bit burned out, but not terribly. But that song, God, please don't play it for me. And now to my favorite band. And perhaps the reason why this album never made masterpiece for me is because of this song, Tom Sawyer. Now, do I think it's a brilliant song? Yes. I think it's the most brilliant song they've put out. Do I love it? I did. Yeah, I loved it. When I first heard this album, it was this and Vital Signs were my two favorite on the album. But I do not ever want to hear it again. It used to annoy me. There's one guy where I used to work, and he found out I was a Rush fan, and then every time he'd see me, he would start singing Tom Sawyer. And I told him one day, I said, I can't stand that song. Oh, it's a Rush song. It's their best. Yeah, maybe, but I don't want to hear it anymore, so stop singing it. Yeah, Tom Sawyer, off my list. Limelight, maybe a little bit on that same thing. Maybe not as bad, but same. And even YYZ and Brad Barchett have gotten to that side. That's part of the reason why this album, to me, is just not one of my favorite Rush albums. It's not a masterpiece for me. I know I'm going to take some heat for that. I like the album. The Vital Signs is one of my favorite Rush songs. YYZ, I think, was one of my favorite songs at one time, too. And all these songs are strong, but I just think it was overkilled. Like they just made it out to be this kind of monster that it isn't. And so Tom Sawyer, for me, I've heard it way too much. And every time Rush does something and they ask them to play something, they always play that song. Please, I can't take it anymore. Leave me be. So there you have it. Did I miss any of the I'm going to do a quick brief look here to see if I missed anybody that I had on my list here that I wanted to talk about. And there was one more, and for some reason I forgot to grab the album off of the stand. I probably could turn around and find it, but I'm not going to bother. I'll just tell you what it is, and you all know it anyways. It's the song Barracuda from Heart. This was my favorite Heart song, even more so than Magic Man, even more so than Sing Child Sing and some of these other great classic songs that they put out. But it's just every time I see any videos or listen to the radio, whatever, it's the one song that they just browbeat and hammered to death. And I can't listen to it anymore. I'm just tired of it. So Barracuda from Heart. So that's it. That's my 25 songs that suffer from radio burnout. And in order for them to suffer from radio burnout, I must have loved them at one time. And if I could go down here, there isn't a track that I talked about today that I haven't loved at some point in the past. But too much of a good thing is not necessarily a good thing. So we're going to do a second video next week, but this one is going to be 25 songs that I loved that even though they were played a ton on the radio, they, for whatever reason, didn't burn out. So it's going to be a little bit of a different thing. They avoided the burnout syndrome that these ones did. And maybe by doing that video, I'll try to figure out why those songs didn't end up on the burnout agenda, because many of them probably should have been. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of fun video, and we'll be back next Wednesday with that second favorites video. If you've liked this episode, please hit the like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, you can put it in the comment section below. If you want to ridicule me for my picks here, you can do that below. That's all part of the fun and games. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, and we will see you then. So take care and have yourself a good evening. Goodbye.